Beloved, listen closely, because this message carries weight. The person who walked away from your life did not lose you like someone loses a thing that can be replaced tomorrow. No, they lost the one place where they ever felt fully seen, fully known, fully real. And that truth did not come to them slowly. It did not knock gently. It reached them in silence, late, sudden, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Because when the noise fades, truth gets louder. What began as a passing thought quickly became something heavier, something they could not explain away. They tried, they pushed it down, they searched for another distraction. But some truths do not leave just because a person feels unready. And what hit them was not just missing your voice, your presence, or the comfort you gave so naturally. It was deeper than that. It was the chilling realization that no one else has ever looked at them the way you did. Stay with me here because this part matters. You were never ordinary to them. You were not just somebody who cared. You were the one who saw beneath the mask. You noticed the parts of them they kept away from everyone else. Even more than that, you touched the parts they had hidden from their own eyes, the pieces buried so far down, they almost believed those pieces were gone forever. But you found them, you saw them, and you did not run. That is why this loss is haunting them now. It is not because you were simply kind, it is because your presence exposed what was real. And once someone has been loved in a way that reaches the soul, surface-level connection starts to feel empty. So before we go further, hear this line and let it land. This is not just about being missed. This is about being unmatched. And that truth is now sitting in front of them with nowhere left to hide. Most people think love is attention. They think it is texting back, showing up, saying the right words, staying close, giving warmth. But real love goes deeper. Real love reveals. You revealed them, not by force, not by pressure, just by being honest, steady, and present. You saw the insecurity hiding behind their confidence. You saw the fear beneath their need to stay in control. You saw the emptiness they covered with busyness, charm, noise, and performance. You saw the hurt they wrapped up and handed to the world as strength. And still, you stayed. You held the full truth of who they were without asking them to become someone easier to love. That created a kind of closeness they had no language for. It felt good. It also terrified them. Because for someone who has spent years managing what others can see, being deeply understood can feel more threatening than being alone. You became a mirror. You reflected back what lived in their heart when they could not face it themselves. And when a person finally sees their real self with that kind of clarity, it can feel beautiful and unbearable at the same time. They were not prepared for that kind of reflection. So they reacted the only way their wounds knew how. Not always in big, dramatic ways. Sometimes it was small, a delayed reply when love was right there, sudden distance when closeness was growing, tension created out of nowhere just to make room to breathe, coldness in the exact moment softness was needed most. None of that was random. None of it meant you imagined the connection. Those were defense patterns. They were pulling away because your love was getting too close to the truth. And if this is reaching your heart right now, do not skip this next part, because it may be the line you needed all along. You were not making them uncomfortable. You were making them aware. That awareness started waking up wounds they had buried years before you ever arrived. Old pain, old fear, old beliefs that told them they were not enough, not safe, not worthy of being loved without conditions. You did not put those wounds there. You did not create their fear. You simply brought light into rooms they had spent years trying to keep dark. And some people would rather lose what is real than face what is broken inside them. That is the painful truth. Instead of turning inward and healing, they turned outward and escaped. Distance felt safer, distraction felt easier. A shallow life felt more manageable than real transformation. Through your connection, something new was being offered to them. A path toward wholeness, a chance to stop performing and start living honestly. But fear clouded their sight. The unknown road of healing felt more threatening than the old pain they already understood. So they chose what was familiar, even if it cost them something rare. But here is what you must understand. Running from truth does not erase truth. It only delays the day it rises again. And for them, that delay reached its end. There was no public breakdown, no dramatic collapse, just a quiet moment when the mask slipped and the silence got honest. They looked around at the people in their life, the conversations, the routines, the noise, the carefully arranged distractions, and they felt the emptiness beneath all of it. Nothing touched the depth they once knew with you. Nothing reached the places you reached simply by being there. That is when it clicked. Not softly, not kindly, with force. They realized that what they lost was not just a relationship. It was the only connection that made them feel fully seen without shame. And that kind of realization does not pass quickly. It stays, it echoes, it follows them into every room. And if you have ever wondered whether they knew what you were, hear this clearly, they know now. What is crushing them is not only that they miss you, it is that they now see that nothing around them can replace the way you understood them. No new face, no casual conversation, no half-hearted bond, no attention from somebody else. None of it carries the same depth. None of it reaches beyond the surface the way you did without even trying. No one else saw through their image with that kind of calm and clean honesty. No one else made them feel exposed and safe at the same time. That is rare. That is why every new connection now feels thin. Every laugh feels lighter than it should. Every interaction leaves a kind of quiet emptiness behind it. Because once a person has tasted real depth, shallow waters stop feeling peaceful. They start feeling unbearable. They tried to tell themselves you were replaceable. They built reasons in their own mind. They minimized the bond. They called the discomfort incompatibility instead of calling it what it truly was, growth they were too afraid to accept. They searched for a copy of what you gave, hoping they could find the same feeling without needing the same level of honesty. But it does not work like that. What you carried was not a trick of timing. It was not chemistry alone. It was not luck. It was something real, something clean, something rooted far deeper than image or performance. That is why their spirit keeps comparing. And every comparison ends in the same place. No one loved them the way you did. No one saw them the way you did. No one reached them the way you did. Let that settle, because this message is not here to make you chase them. It is here to free you from the lie that you were easy to lose. You were not easy to lose. You were impossible to replace. And yes, there is more, because the weight they carry now is no longer simple regret. It has turned into something heavier. It has become guilt. Not the light kind of guilt that fades after a few busy days. Not the kind that can be buried under work, noise, or pride. This is the deep kind, the kind that sits in the chest like a stone, because they are finally seeing what your love was showing them the whole time. You were not asking too much. You were not being unreasonable. You were offering something honest to someone who did not yet believe they deserved honest love. That was the real fracture. Deep down, they carried a belief that if you got too close, if you truly saw everything, you would eventually confirm their worst fear and leave. So before that could happen, they left first, or they pulled away first, or they slowly damaged what they claimed to want. It was self-protection dressed up as confusion, distance, mixed signals, silence, and emotional withdrawal. That is how wounded people often abandon what they need most. They do it before love has the chance to test the story they believe about themselves. And now they are left with the contradiction. They were not rejected by you. They were loved with unusual patience. They were known with unusual accuracy. They were met with real tenderness, and still they pushed it away. That realization is heavy because it cannot be blamed on your flaws. It cannot be blamed on timing forever. It cannot be blamed on circumstances for much longer. At some point the heart knows. At some point the soul gets honest. And when that honesty arrives, it says something painful. I was given something rare, and I did not know how to hold it. Please hear me. This is not a call to rescue them from their consequences. This is not an invitation to return and carry what they refuse to carry. This is confirmation. Confirmation that your love was real. Confirmation that your grief was not foolish. Confirmation that what you gave mattered, even if it was mishandled. So if part of you has been blaming yourself in secret, stop and listen. What broke here did not break because you loved too deeply. It broke because they feared what your love revealed. And that is the lie heaven wants shattered right now. The lie that says if only you were calmer, softer, less intense, less honest, less deep, less emotional, they would have stayed. No, that lie sounds wise, but it poisons the heart. It turns love into self-editing. It makes you shrink so others can avoid feeling exposed. Do not carry that lie one more day. You were not too much. You were too real for the version of themselves they were still pretending to be. You were not too emotional. You were too honest for their well-practiced avoidance. You were not too intense. You were too alive for the shallow role they were trying to survive inside. You were not the problem. You were the interruption. You interrupted old patterns. You interrupted emotional hiding. You interrupted the stories they told themselves about what love should cost and how safe distance was supposed to feel. Instead of letting that discomfort lead them toward growth, they resisted it, because the hardest truth was never honesty with you, it was honesty with themselves. People do not only run from love because it is wrong, often they run because it is right in a way they cannot control. Real love shines light on everything unfinished. It touches what is still hurting. It finds the cracks under the surface. And your love was precise, not cruel, precise. It saw clearly. It did not fall for performance because it was never chasing performance in the first place. That kind of seeing cannot be copied by effort. It does not happen because somebody studied the right words. It comes from depth. It comes from truth. It comes from a heart that knows how to love without pretending. And that is why their fear was never proof that you lacked value. Their fear was proof that your love reached further than they could manage. So let this line stay with you, maybe longer than anything else in this message. Their inability to receive you was never a measure of your worth. Your worth did not rise or fall based on their readiness. Now they are trapped inside a tension that time alone will not fix. They crave the depth they let go of. They crave the safety of being fully known without judgment. They crave the peace of being with someone who saw everything and still stayed. But they still do not fully know how to receive that kind of closeness without fear rushing in to tear it apart. So the pressure builds, quietly, daily, because each shallow interaction reminds them of what is missing. Each empty connection throws your memory into sharper focus. And what changed in them recently is bigger than longing. Something shifted, something woke up that cannot go back to sleep. Losing you, then sitting in that long silence, forced an awareness they had tried hard to avoid. And once real awareness enters a person, old denial starts to lose its power. They may still distract themselves, they may still act normal, they may still look fine from the outside, but inside something has turned. They are now seeing patterns that go far beyond you. They are remembering every time real closeness started forming, and they sabotaged it, every moment they felt vulnerable and chose distance instead, every relationship they kept just far enough away to stay in control. You were not the first person they guarded themselves from, but you may be the first person whose absence made the pattern impossible to ignore, because other losses brought relief. Yours brought a silence that grew louder. Yours left an emptiness that would not smooth over. Yours exposed the cost of their own defenses. And that is why this moment matters, because the mind does not only break under endings, sometimes it cracks when truth refuses to stay buried. That is what happened. Memories came back with force. The way you looked at them when they could not look at themselves, the calm you carried when they were inwardly falling apart, the patience you gave them when lesser love would have walked away, the strange and holy comfort of being known without being shamed. They thought that kind of love would be available later, somewhere else, when they felt more ready. But rare things do not wait forever. Rare things do not keep returning after repeated rejection. What you carried was not common. That matters. Because some part of you may still be asking in the quiet, was it real? Did I feel more than they did? Did I build depth where there was only confusion? Did I give meaning to something that never truly held me the way I believed it did? Listen carefully. What you felt was real. What you saw in them was real. The connection was not your imagination. The depth was not projection. It was mutual, even if they did not know how to handle it. And yes, their behavior often contradicted it. But behavior shaped by fear can hide love without erasing it. People do not build strong defenses against what means nothing. They do not sabotage empty connections with this much force. Resistance of that size does not grow around something small. It grows around something powerful. Their retreat was not proof of insignificance. It was proof that your presence reached places inside them. They did not know how to hold steady. That does not excuse what happened, but it does explain why the bond felt so deep, while the outcome felt so confusing. And maybe that confusion has weighed on you more than the loss itself. Maybe what hurt most was not only that they left, but that what they showed you and what they felt did not seem to match. That split can shake a heart. But now the truth is rising. The split was not between your love and reality. The split was inside them. One part of them wanted depth. Another part feared the death of the mask. One part wanted to stay. Another part panicked at being truly known. You happened to stand where those two forces collided. That is why the bond felt sacred and unstable all at once. So if you needed an answer, here it is in plain words. You were not crazy, and you were not alone in what you felt. The connection was real. The fear was real too. And fear won for a time. But fear winning once does not rewrite what was true between you. Even now, the lesson of your absence is still working on them. Every day without your presence becomes another mirror, not because you are there, but because the lack of you reveals what only you brought. The honesty, the depth, the calm, the way silence felt safe with you instead of awkward, the way you could look at them and somehow reach beyond the story they were trying to sell the world. They are learning now that many people can offer attention, attraction, even excitement. Very few can offer recognition. Very few can stand in front of another soul and say, without words, I see what is hidden, and I am not leaving because of it. That is what they lost. So yes, they may replay moments, the text they never sent, the warmth they withdrew, the tenderness they met with distance, the truth they tried to dismiss. They may sit with scenes in their mind and feel the sting of what they could have chosen differently. That is part of the weight now. But again, hear me, because this is important for your freedom. Their awakening is not your assignment. Their regret is not your burden. Their lesson is not your place of residence. You are not called to stop your healing just because they finally started feeling what they avoided. You are not meant to stand still while someone else discovers the value of what they mishandled. Let that sink in. You can have compassion without going backward. You can understand their wounds without volunteering to be wounded again. You can admit the connection was rare without deciding the door must reopen. Sometimes the greatest proof that your love was real is that you no longer need to beg to be chosen. Sometimes healing looks like honoring what was true while also refusing to live inside what was broken. And if this message is finding you at the right moment, let this be your retention line, the one you carry after the video ends. Not every person who realizes your worth has earned access to you again, because while they sit with the truth of what they lost, your life is still moving, your heart is still being healed. Your spirit is still being prepared for a love that will not fear your depth. Through every tear, every sleepless night, every moment you replayed what happened trying to make sense of it, something was being built in you too. Stronger clarity, deeper self-respect, cleaner discernment, greater peace. What you lost did not end your story, it refined it. And that matters, because when someone mishandles rare love, the answer is not to become less rare. The answer is to protect what is sacred and give it where it can be honored. There is a love meant for you that will not panic when it is seen, a love that will not call depth a burden, a love that will not need to wound you just to keep control, a love that will not punish honesty. You are not being prepared for a repeat, you are being prepared for peace. So do not let this message pull you into fantasy. Let it anchor you in truth. Yes, they see it now. Yes, the silence reached them. Yes, what you gave marked them more deeply than they expected. But this is not about their awakening more than it is about your release. Your value does not need their apology to become real. Your love does not need their return to be proven meaningful. Your heart does not need to reopen a closed door to confirm that the connection mattered. It mattered already. It was real already. And now the wisdom is yours. Keep that, carry that, build from that. Let what happened teach you without defining you. Let it deepen you without hardening you. Let it refine your standards without stealing your softness. And if you have stayed with me this far, hold this close. The right love will not need to lose you to understand your value. So lift your head, beloved. What left your hands did not leave your worth behind. What they failed to recognize in time does not become less sacred because it was missed. You loved with patience. You loved with honesty. You loved with courage. You stayed where many would have fled. You gave tenderness where confusion was returned. You offered real presence in a world full of guarded people performing connection while avoiding intimacy. None of that was wasted. Love like yours never disappears into nothing. It shapes, it teaches, it reveals, it leaves truth behind. And the truth now is simple